I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of March 13th.
Second.
Motion made by Richard, second by Ann, all in favor?
Aye.
Any disapproved? Motion carries. Minutes are approved as written. The second item on our agenda is the application by Robert Karan Homes. This is a subdivision seeking final approval for Hunter's Ridge Pauley Drive. Tax map numbers 111-8-17.1 and 111-2-9.5. We have received the package that has been distributed. We have all reviewed the mapping. And I believe at this time it would be appropriate to do seeker. Okay, is that the percent? But before we do seeker, would you like to talk to us about it? Go ahead.
Just been,
If you don't mind, we'll do a quick update. Matt Navarro, Navarro Consulting, representing Bob, Sharon, Karen, as well as Bob, of course, who have interest in the development here, the continuation of Hunter's Ridge. I think we've talked about this for like close to 2 years now with regards to this particular application, the continuum of the approved subdivision from probably close to 20 years ago. Part of the outstanding questions is my understanding deal with stormwater and the impacts to the existing neighbors and neighborhood, and how the stormwater conforms to the current regulations and that are put forth here for residential development. So the updated set of plans that we presented to the board recently, and I know this has been kind of a continuum and kind of a delay and kind of a, you know, start, stop over the course of these last few years. But I think with today's current climate, I think Sharon at some point in time is going to address the current residential market, residential climate of what we're all seeing with regards to inventory shortages, especially here in the eastern suburbs. But with regard to that, I don't know if you want to talk about that now, Sharon.
oh, well, no, I just wanted to remind everybody, and I'm sure most of you know that right now in central New York, but especially in Manlius, there are just not enough houses for all the buyers that we have. We need more houses. We need lots to build houses on. The market in our area is crazy right now. A house goes on the market for a certain price, a lot more money than was paid for it years ago. It goes on and you've got multiple buyers, multiple offers, and they sell for more than asking price. I'm just trying to point out that there's a lot of buyers out there and Manlius needs more homes and lots to build homes on to supply.
So the outstanding item with regard to stormwater, I just want to kind of rehash this for a couple minutes. The second sheet of that application, or that resubmittal that we made, we've done a few things. The first to understand is for residential development, the criteria by which we are garnered by DEC with far as a stormwater pollution prevention plan and notice of intent application. On a residential development, if the area of impact is less than 5 acres, and if the overall impervious area over the course of the tract of development is less than 25% impervious, then a erosion sedimentation control plan is required, a SWIP is required, but quality and quantity mitigation is not required by DEC standard. Just wanted to lay out that performance standards for residential development. Irregardless of that, this residential development is part of a tract that was approved, and the design of that was done by John Dunkel, adjunct professor at ESF, with Dunn Gormo. There is a mitigation system that is employed with regards to this development. And that mitigation system includes a stormwater quantity basin. Just as long as we can get the water there. So when we take a look at, first, let's talk about the 5 acres. So that plan that we showed you, we have a dark dash line, and that outlines the limit of work or the limit of grading that can occur. The other thing that we've done is we have put forth on here actual building plan. These building plans are placed on here, not as necessarily in the exact place that a buyer will choose them, but you can see that the building footprints are all good sized footprints. We've placed randomly these footprints on the lots. We have specifically graded the entire lot based on the topography. With the grading of those lots, the potential conveyance of stormwater is to get that stormwater to continue down Poly Drive, further here to the south, and get it into that mitigation basin. Certainly, the properties on the east side, that's not a problem because they are going to drain off the hill into now the road system, be collected into what was previously thought as a drainage system, an extension of that drainage system with regards to this extension of the road. But as well, what this grading plan does is it shows that each of these lots on the west side, and when you look at the first floors of those houses, and you look at the elevation of the road and the elevation of the storm piping, all of the impervious area from those houses on that west side can get connected, into this stormwater system and into that mitigation basin. What that effectively does is it reduces the watershed area of the water that comes off the hillside and impacts the area further to the west. By putting the road system in and by putting the drainage system in that was never constructed, but now can be constructed, we are actually improving the water impact to those properties. We are reducing the contributory drainage area by implementing the road system, the drainage system, and by the fact that those constructed homes here on the west side can get connected to that storm system. So drainage wise, first, the outline of that dashed line is less than 5 acres. CAD doesn't lie. The grading limits are tied directly to the 1 foot contours, so we are very confident that that can occur. Outside of that dashed line essentially is areas that will not be disturbed during construction of each of the homes. We're under 5 acres. So therefore, by DEC, we have to do a SWIP, we have to do an erosion control plan, but we don't have to do quantity mitigation for residential development. But we are, because it's already been employed back when John Dunkel did it for the original development. The other impact here is we are reducing runoff that hitting those existing residential areas. So I think the exercise was valid. The question was valid. I think we've answered that question now with regards to being very specific with regards to constructability of homes, of which both Bob and Bob are proposing for this development. Although this house might go over here, this house might go over here, but the footprints are all good sized footprints. The impact will be less than 5 acres. Regardless of that, the stormwater, the runoff impact will be less than what occurs today via diversion of runoff. So I hope that addresses the stormwater issues that have been questioning of the board. We're certainly here to answer any additional questions. And I think, you know, for the current climate out there with the marketplace, You know, and, what the county exec is saying, you know, we need some inventory here in the area. And look at this as an already approved tract. For lack of the farmer slanging me, this is potentially low hanging fruit. In the fact that it makes planning sense as well to take and eliminate two dead ends and make a continuity of which was previously a plan 20 years ago. Thank you very much.
Matt, before you go. The basin that you were talking about, that the water is flowing to.
Yeah.
Is there an HOA down there that maintains that basin?
Town of Manlius.
That was built 20 years ago. There was no HOA developed then, but again, it's a grandfathered in stormwater management area that was approved by the planning board back when the development first occurred. There's a drainage district. There's an existing drainage district for it. Sorry, you're wrong. There's an existing drainage district for that whole area.
Okay, so,
Of which this tract is a part of that drainage district.
okay, who owns the land? Where the basin is, who owns it?
It's outside of this tract. Do you know who it is, Scott?
For the owners of those lots. But it's in an easement and the town has the right and is supposed to maintain that pond.
That pond's
That's
in the
an
drainage
easement.
district.
But you're confusing me. You've got a basin on lots.
There is a basin on a lot. There is an easement within that lot.
Yep.
There is a drainage district of which I'm assuming when there's a drainage district, there is some that is created as a taxable body of which some monies are being contributed somewhere.
Yes,
And to our understanding from the approval 20 years ago, it is the responsibility of the town of Manlius because it's within a drainage district established for the town of Manlius.
and that is this development part of that drainage
It's
district?
within that drainage district, yes,
It
sir.
was designed to be connected. Our section will be connected and the water will drain to that pond, to that
Okay.
existing pond. 20 years ago.
And what is the penalty? If the 5 acres or more than the 5 acres is disturbed? What does the town has to go after the developer if what you're
You don't give
proposing?
us a building permit. You deny us a permit for the whatever breaks that threshold of 5 acres. And you say you're breaking the threshold of 5 acres, you must conform to the DEC permit requirements.
So I think the best way to handle this is when a house is staked out and gonna be built.
Yep.
The surveyor stakes out the perimeter that can be disturbed and what cannot be disturbed. And when we have a silk fence,
Yeah, that doesn't satisfy me because the owner of that house can do whatever the hell he wants after the fact.
well, you got the DEC, you got the DEC that's gonna come down there. If somebody's in violation and somebody calls the DEC and DEC comes in, they write
They
fine.
don't come,
What?
they don't come.
Well,
Well, what you're asking for is disturbance, right?
That's
So during
one of my
construction,
questions.
during construction, this becomes disturbance.
Yep.
It's gonna eventually be turned back over into, you know, a established vegetative state. It's gonna have lawn, it's gonna have some trees, it's gonna have something. If, say, in the future, some fictional future, say this lot here, this guy says, I want to grow my property.
Yeah.
There's plenty of, we haven't shown, again, this is a 50 scale map. Every inch is 50 feet. Typical pool is what, 20 by 40, right? That's a ½ inch by 1 inch. Pool. You can fit a pool here. If you want me to show pools, I'll put pools on here.
I guess what I'll ask direct. What is the pushback? Why is the pushback on saying we're only gonna disturb this much? When we know in the future, more could be disturbed. What is the pushback? What is?
Frankly, that was a question that was brought to us. How do we say, we're saying this is giving you a second factor of safety. The first factor of safety is we already have a mitigation basin and it's already been approved. We have a 100-year storm mitigation basin that was designed, and it showed the rainfall event, and it showed that for the entire tract. And based on the calculations that were prepared 20 years ago, calculations haven't changed. The design elements that I use today are the same design elements that were developed back in 1920. The only difference is I have a better computer than doing the calculations by hand. But when Doug and I went to school, when we did it by hand, the calculations haven't changed. There is a mitigation design for a pond to hold a 100-year storm. The question is, can we convey that water to that pond? By this grading, we can convey that water to the pond. So when we take a look, we go back 20 years and we say, this was an undeveloped piece of property. All of Hunter's Ridge was undeveloped. That pond was designed to say, okay, we're gonna clear a certain amount, we're gonna put in this house, and on average, we're gonna take 25% impervious on every lot. What is the delta, the increase in runoff? And now we have to reduce the runoff via a ponding system that slows, and I think I've talked about it to the board in the past, how you've got a big cup and you're slowly trickling the water out. That same processes that we would design a 100-year storm pond or mitigation basin 20 years ago is the same process that I would go through today. So what I'm telling you here is, by infilling this piece was a part of that design. The impervious area for this piece was included in John Dunkel's calculation. We corroborated that independently because we got his calc. And as part of the report that we put forth to you, that this piece was inclusive of that stormwater report of 20 years ago. All we have to make sure is the water from this comes into this pipe and drains to that mitigation basin, and now we've improved the situation. It was thoroughly reviewed by the board 20 years ago. It was approved for the entire tract. The only difference is, because of economy, because of whatever happened, those 10 lots did not get built.
Okay, so I guess I've got more of a legal question. These lots were not built. The water from these lots are going to a basin that's on a lot somewhere else that somebody owns. And do they have a legal right to do that? I
It's
don't.
all, but this was all part of the master plan.
I'm asking my attorney.
Again, drainage district is not my bag, that would be Tim,
Okay,
and I don't know what the status is of that drainage. basin.
okay, that would be a concern of mine,
Oh, yeah.
whether they have
I
the
think
legal right.
Bob, of course, brought that.
Okay,
The district, and showed that this is part of the district.
okay, and if the attorneys say that's the way it is, fine. I find it hard to believe that, water goes from this
Yeah.
development to a lot.
There were three sections. Mr. DeForest, there were three sections of this one master plan that was originally designed. This is just the last piece of the puzzle, that this pond had already factored in all the runoff to go into that pond. Nothing has changed. There was three sections. When you do a subdivision, you come in and if there's 100 lots, but you're not going to develop 100 lots all at once because of the money outlay that happens. You come in and do 20 lots, you do 20 lots, but the master plan was all done in the beginning to factor in these lots. And the pond was sized up and the district was set up before. Now, when we came in to talk about this, the things have changed, obviously, with SWIPs and such. The board thought that if we bring it up to the current SWIP today, which is a lot more, obviously a lot more detailed than 20 or 25 years ago. They thought that would suffice, or that would make you feel better. So the only reason we changed gears is because this is what was asked of us. And this is the change gears, another layer of protection. Would you call it another layer of protection?
You haven't redone the SWIP for stormwater,
No,
which is what we asked. We're at a little bit of a disadvantage, I will tell you, because it's been a long time. We've had a public hearing over a year ago.
Yes.
Where we heard a lot of concerns, and the drainage district, the stormwater basin doesn't appear to be working. It seems like you would want, since you were involved with this originally, you're coming in, let me finish, please, let me finish. You were coming in originally involved with it, that you would do due diligence to your previous customers to relook and do a SWIP again. It's been over 20 years, 22 years, or 23 years at this point, or more, to do another SWIP. That's what I am asking, is to have a full stormwater SWIP done. Because the current system does not appear to be working for the current situation. So I'm not opposed to additional homes for Manlius. But I'm in a development where I don't want the developer to come back because we have issues with stormwater. So I don't want them doing anything additional. I would like to see have this be a part of why it's not working now before we put additional structure in.
Okay, hold on. So existing storage pond that's in place. There isn't any trouble or problems.
But stuff's not draining into
Or
it, it's draining
Well,
everywhere.
that's, you can't make all the water from an area get to somewhere. Everybody
There may
has,
need to be something else done,
well,
is what I'm saying.
then, you know,
As a professional engineer, I think you would want
well,
to make sure, and not just go with less than 5 acres and really
So-
pull yourself.
so let me just point out this, the issues of that the neighbors have are some light puddling on their property. Okay, what was it?
It was, like I said, it's been a while since you guys have all been in, since we had the public hearing, we were sent photographs. There was photographs of children standing in water, waiting for the bus,
Yeah.
so that's a lot more than puddling.
So I stopped in a few weeks ago and to talk to Rob Cushing, because I said, Rob, you know, I haven't been around this neighborhood all the time. I said, what are the issues? What are some of the issues you've had? And the issues when there was large ponding and puddling in the road was leaves stopping the water from going into the manholes. Because maybe the leaves could have got washed in that storm into there, plugged the top, water built up, and as soon as they pulled the leaves back, it goes down. That's what a lot of that was. So the existing pond that this is gonna drain into, that is set up already, gets very little water in that pond when we have a large.
There's gotta be something that's causing it not to get to them.
The other point.
So I apologize for the,
No,
when did?
No. no, this is not a public hearing. We conducted a public hearing a year ago.
It's been nice and just said.
Thank you.
So when you review the overall drainage without that road system and without the conveyance and without the catch basins and without the collection system, that hillside drains right through the middle. Okay, so that water, that runoff, if we take that overall watershed, we go to the top of the hill and say, okay, we're gonna get a microburst type of rainstorm event. The water has only one port of traffic. They travel from the east to the west and it's continuing right through the middle.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but the road is kind of on a ridge, so the water on the west side, or the west and the east are a little bit separate.
Yeah, it does break. forward.
Yeah, so it's not all draining.
But there is a large amount of water that does
Yeah,
head west.
and
So
I
the
do have some
existing-
more questions, but I'll let you finish.
Well, I guess
think
go ahead. So I guess what Matt's trying to explain is I guess we can talk about the current conditions and what's happening with water runoff. Nothing has been done. Zilcho has been done in this property. But when you put a road in, you put pipe and stone in, and this water is then managed. And houses are built and it's graded and water is pushed. And all this right here is going to these neighbors. All of it, all this water right here on this property, that's barren piece of property that's never been touched, is just running to these neighbors. But when the road is put in and the pipes are extended and structures are put in the road, and then the houses are built and it's graded to push a large amount from the grading plant, all this water to the street, in the structures, and over to the existing pond that's in place that has the capacity that I've gone to that pond when these issues came up. And I'm not sure what happens when it pours. It rains hard. I get up, I live right below this hill. I take a heck of a lot more water at me than all these people do. And I went up there the day after, I took video, I sent video over. I walked through the existing storage pond that's 4 or 5 feet tall. I walked through that after we had 2 inches of rain the night before, and there wasn't 3 inches of water in the bottom of it. So the good thing is when the pipes and the road and the grade is done and water is managed to that pond, that water is not going to be shutting them.
That proper conveyance, getting the water.
I guess I just still don't understand the resistance to doing a full SWIP.
So I didn't finish.
Yeah, and then I really want to hear from Aaron.
So when you say full SWIP, you want us to redo the entire Hunter's Ridge development or a SWIP for the development portion of the 10 lots?
I think the amount of time that's passed, the standards that have changed, the fact that the town doesn't even maintain stormwater anymore. I think it needs a full SWIP. That's like Rich says, I'm only one vote, but for the whole development.
So the town does have to manage this basin.
I know,
The existing basin that's in place that was put in 20 years ago.
that's another one of my questions. We're coming for a change.
Okay,
Whatever it is.
so that answer the question about the SWIP.
That's why we.
So I guess what I'll say is, from those discussions, we have prepared a stormwater pollution prevention plan. So when you say SWIP, it's a very
Yeah,
specific.
just for construction, is my understanding, is what we. were
It
presented
will-
with, Not,
So if you would like a stormwater analysis of the watershed contributory to the pond, that's one thing. When you say SWIP to us, that deals with a DEC permit process or an EPA permit process, and it has certain specific criteria to meet a letter of the law. So when I started my presentation, I was saying, we have prepared, and what was part of our application is a stormwater pollution prevention plan that meets the letter of today's law. That was my understanding of what was asked of us. If you're asking that you should do and reanalyze the contributory area to that pond, that has not been done. To my knowledge, that wasn't specifically asked for. But again, if that's what the board would like us to do, we can reopen the hydrologic and hydraulic analysis that was performed. And we can take a look and make sure that the contributory watershed is consistent and rerun the numbers based on today's computer programs and say, is this basin appropriately sized? So we can do that. The acceptance of that is proper conveyance of that water to get from the watershed in proposed condition to the pond. And that's what we're saying, that the potential, without totally analyzing the potential issues and problems that have occurred, is conveyance hasn't been getting to the pond, not the sizing of the pond.
yeah, and I think that's what we need to find out, if you driving there, us driving there, it's all kind of random per se, not science and engineering. I would like to see the science and engineering, and I think you guys have a great opportunity here, because not all stormwater plans seem to work, just in the experience I've seen around the town and other places. So I'm talking about changes that may need to be done as part of the whole development, which was the whole thing from the beginning.
Yeah, Lori, I think the other thing, and this is for the board too, and Aaron and I were was. The current New York State DEC phase 2 permit does not anticipate segmentation. They're basically showing segmentation, right? They're not showing all the lots being part of a project.
Yeah.
Right, so I think that's the real concern that we're talking about here is, you know, as an MS4 community, we have that jurisdiction to look at that. And if we think that the project is all of the lots, or we want to be all of the lots, that's a jurisdiction. Right now, it appears to me that it's segmented, you know, a little bit less than
Yeah.
5 acres.
Can I ask this also a special question? If it is found or determined, or there would be greater than 5 acres disturbance, what happens differently on this plan than what you presented?
Well, you know, I guess we as builders, developers, when we agree to this, we're gonna have to do this, and if it requires us to put a truck on it, haul dirt somewhere to store it and then bring it back to backfill, you know, we're gonna have, you know, we've set up something we think we know that we can comply to. But if Bob and I have to spend, you know, a few $1,000s on every lot to manage the dirt, you know, we just pass that on, so it is what it is, but so I think that one of the questions where you talked about, you know, who polices this, and if we go over this 5 acres and so on and so forth, it's a part of this, it's in this SWIP. And the DEC is gonna understand what we're doing, and they're gonna have the plan, and they're the ones that would be, they'd be the ones bad that.
Well, but my question is, let's just say you came in here with a plan that disturbs 6 acres or 10 acres. What would you have to design?
I'm
That's
sorry, I don't understand.
So if we're over 5 acres, say if we're over 5 acres in impact, say if this, you know, the line changes and it's 6 acres.
Mhm.
So by code, then we have to do a water quality, water quantity mitigation design to show that the design releases stormwater to less than existing condition based on analysis. We would have to do a runoff reduction and a water quality analysis of that particular area. So if we are indeed over 5 acres, then there would be additional mitigation requirements, of which if it were designed, then we would have to provide, whether that be as simple as each lot has an individual rain garden or a catchment area to slow that release of runoff of those impervious areas, or whether it be the terminology that DEC hates, an end of the pipe, which is the old design standard mitigation basin, or modifying that existing mitigation basin to meet some mitigation standard. Again, the performance being less than what is analyzed as a pre-existing condition number.
Matt, that's precisely the problem that I have, is that every development we've approved subdivision over the last 10 years, maybe 15 before this original one was done, is that those basins are on common areas where the HOA is responsible to take care of it. Now, what you're saying is if you go over the 5 acres and you need to put some type of basin in, it's gonna be on a lot. That, I don't want that.
It's within an easement that someone has the ability to impact that area, presumably the town, if the town say.
The town doesn't, Matt, the town doesn't want it. That's gotta be an HOA.
All
That-
right, well, again,
that is with the
that's a
homeowners
legal
to take-
question that's above me when you say
And that
there's
just
an
passed.
existing easement and the town doesn't want to manage something that was approved 20 years ago. I don't know that answer.
For your question, Valerie, generally what you have in front of you is a sedimentation code.
Yeah.
That uses the existing. Correct.
Correct.
So there's no retention.
And
There's no retention. No addition.
No, this, you know, and the reason the town and Rob Cushing doesn't want to have to go out and manage these is because everybody has a different standard to what they think the town should do to maintain these. One guy wants to mow it twice a week, the other guy wants to mow it twice a year. So they don't like to get in the middle of
It's easier than that. We don't want anything to do with those things.
I know,
It's simple.
and then it gets complicated because now you gotta set up an HOA. Now the neighbors.
I don't have to set up an HOA, the developer does.
That's,
No,
but the neighbors don't want it, the HOA, then the neighbors don't want to get put in the middle of trying to manage this pond and such with the HOA through the HOA. That doesn't work either.
The town is not gonna do it. As
Well,
long as I'm here,
That's good.
We're not gonna
That's
do
okay. You
Well,
don't have to do that. That's the good thing.
I'm not gonna answer whether the town will or won't do it, but the question is, and maybe I should address this to Doug, 'cause everyone's here has asked this question. I've heard that board members are not satisfied to believe that only 5 acres are going to be disturbed. So then you have to do this next thing that Matt was just.
We're not gonna do that. We don't have to do that next.
Right,
We'll-
so Doug, is this next thing going to solve the issues at hand? Are you following my question?
Well, I think what I just told you, right, is, right, the phase 2 stormwater regs really don't allow for segmentation. So what you've got in front of you is, it doesn't include the whole project, right? What they're saying is they're only focusing on a portion of the project. Therefore, all they are proposing is a sedimentation and erosion control plan.
Right, disturbance of 5 acres, but I've heard the board saying they don't believe that only 5 acres would be disturbed because it's not a reasonable development of a residential lot. That's what I've heard the board say.
Now, I've
So,
been sitting here quiet. I've been listening to the debate and I haven't
I'm
said
not
anything.
debating, I'm just asking.
So now it's time for me to tell you what I think about this. It's been over 20 years since this project was approved. And you've done phase 1 and phase 2. We started getting complaints on this project in 2004. We have seen all the photos of a real problem with water drainage. Stormwater management has changed an awful lot over the last 20+ years. I have looked at your area of the disturbance and I do not find it credible. I believe that this has got to be more than 5 acres of disturbance. I do not think the steps that are being taken that should be taken. You came in front of us before, we heard from the public, and the public spoke very strongly about water problems and drainage problems in their own yards in this project. And then you have disappeared from us for the last 10.5 months. When you came back to us, it was our recommendation that you alter your plans. And it came back, I'm seeing the same exact plans, I'm seeing.
We tried to clarify it. We tried to clarify it so you can see on paper how it does work.
Well, I'm just one person, but in my opinion, I am strongly of the opinion that this is excessive of 5 acres of disturbance.
Okay, so does it not make any sense that when we're able to set this up, grade this and pipe this water to the pond that can handle it, how there's not gonna be less water issues?
We've also received a report from Julian Clark Engineering over at Plumley,
Okay,
and he provided that to us over 10 months ago. And I've not seen those issues addressed either. I'm seeing the exact same thing in front of us that we saw last May.
Well, we didn't see a report.
They were sent to Neil at,
okay.
Oh,
last May.
So I guess
So if you want us to move forward on this project, we will move forward and we will have a vote relative to how we feel after we do seeker. But we thought we gave you an opportunity to come back in here with some revised plans to deal with the issues that are here, and I'm not seeing that they're being dealt with.
well, that's, our opinion is we meet the current SWIP scenario by disturbing less than 5 acres, and we showed you that.
Is that the opinion of
That's what,
our engineer?
okay, that's what we showed you.
Ready?
So we're hoping, Chair, that when this road gets set up and the piping set up, and we're able to manage the water that's coming down on that property in the system that's shown there, that it's obvious that, is it not obvious that the water, when we grade and do this to this map, that it's not gonna manage water falling out of the sky?
It's not obvious.
It's not obvious?
No, it's
No, it's not gonna manage anything.
not obvious.
So per Doug's segmentation comment and Valerie's comment about seeing a holistic review, what I propose is that we take a look at the entire Hunter's Ridge development that's tributary to the mitigation basin that exists today. That we run those calcs and run those numbers. And if indeed that basin does not mitigate that 100-year storm and the appropriate theoretical storm events leading up to that, which is typically the 10, 50, and 100, that we show appropriate mitigation through that system. We show appropriate conveyance with this now continuum of Folly Drive. And then we come back and say, here's a full stormwater hydrologic hydraulic analysis of the system that meets today's standard. I think that's really where we're at. That eliminates segmentation, right, Doug? I mean, if we provide a holistic view of what's tributary to that existing basin, we run the hydraulic numbers and we do a hydraulic routing through the volume that exists in that basin and discharge it out through the existing outlet. We're going to be able to tell you in a quantitative sense. I will tell you, we will rely a little bit on the pre-existing surface conditions that are provided from John Dunkel from when that time was, because we need to satisfy that pre-existing runoff to the now developed and future development impervious scenario. But that's going to say that the performance of that basin is good or bad. And I think that's really what I'm hearing from the board, is that there's a feeling that the basin is in the stormwater management is not appropriate in this residential development. And I don't know that answer today standing here. But if we run that analysis and say, okay, pre-existing, let's just say an example, pre-existing 10-year storm, this tributary area had a discharge of 100 cubic feet per second, 100 CFS. When we add the development to it, without mitigating, it was 200 CFS. When we implore and we route through that pond, it's now 95 CFS. We've reduced the runoff rate less than what occurred prior to the development. That's the performance standard that I would propose that we show the planning board and town engineer.
Okay, that's a start. But the second aspect of it, if you take a look at your building envelopes on lots 16, 5, and 4. And you're saying the area of disturbance is less than 5 acres. I don't see how you can possibly say that that disturbance that you got outlined here is the real disturbance. I'm seeing within 10 feet of the building envelope, and you're saying beyond that, it's totally undisturbed. That's totally unrealistic for her to find that.
I don't want to do a project that doesn't make any sense to the whole board. Okay, and it's okay, and if the neighbors are gonna hire an engineer who's gonna put out that report that is absolutely ridiculous, okay? And we want to just leave this as just land that just runs down in the neighbors. We can do that. I mean, if the board doesn't want, I don't want to spend a whole bunch of money trying to make something happen if the board is gonna sit here and tell us that you don't believe that's 5 acres. The CAD system doesn't lie, but that's something that you can say it as an opinion, and that's wrong. If you don't want us to develop it, we won't develop it. I've owned that piece for 15 years and I don't have to build houses there. But it seems like there's so much complicated information out there. And if the more information that needs to be inputted into the system, everybody's gonna have something to say about it, then we don't have to do it. I don't want to do it.
Mr. Karen, our position in this board is, we want development. We want the houses that you're speaking about. We want this community to be increased and have more adequate housing for everybody, but it's gotta be the right type of development. And that's our concern.
Where I'm disappointed is you have a piece of property here that has no water management on it, zero. And there's runoff problems, and when you set up houses in grades and manage the water, it's gonna improve, but you're gonna have a lot of people here, or people that can cast an opinion and say it's not gonna, when it's obviously it's done. So I don't know. All I wanna say,
Saying is all that water that's going in their backyards when it rains hard, because they haven't had any
It's gonna
in
change.
over a year.
it's gonna change.
It's gonna change because the road and all the piping's taking that water that.
But I have a feeling, I just get stuck in, I have a feeling about everybody. Everybody's afraid of the
Yeah.
engineer, the lawyer.
Let Aaron ask.
Aaron?
Yeah, so I've had a chance to look at the drawing. I've listened to what everybody has said. I'm new to the board, but I've reviewed the history of the project. And I do have some things that I'd like to say and some things that maybe Matt can help answer. I'm gonna go down through my questions and they're gonna be kind of all over the place because they relate to different things. I would like to start off by saying, we would really like to see this, at least I should say, I would really like to see this done. I think the scale and the spacing of the homes fits in with the character of what's already there. I think that it was always planned to be part of the project. It was included in the original design. I think you should do it.
Thank you.
Now, I think that there are some problems. From mostly the design aspect with regards to the runoff. Now, I see that you've added these rain gardens. They're a great idea. There's a couple problems in practicality. One, owners either think they're great, they maintain them, they turn them into little gardens, or two, they mow them over and it's all done. The grading plan does not actually show them capturing all that much water at the 1 foot contours that are shown. There should be spot grades, there should be details for each one and a blow up. And I know a lot of this is construction document level stuff. But in order for us to understand these things and be okay with it in such a project, we need to see those little grading area. Now, the DEC detail that you've shown shows the roof drainage tying into those.
Right, go ahead.
The DEC detail you've shown has the roof drainage tying into them, correct?
That could show them that.
Now, a lot of these are not going to then have the impervious area that's found as the roof water draining ultimately into the stormwater system that you're showing. And the main premise of your proposal is that all of the impervious water is going to be captured into the pipe system and conveyed to the pond. Okay, that's a problem.
So the typical detail, you're right, needs to be clarified because there's also rain gardens in the front yard.
There are.
So
For the
again,
most part, they aren't.
not being argumentative, but I think it's a point of clarification that we need to correct the plans to make sure and get more specific with regards to roof leader drainage and be specific to show the contractor the conveyance of all roof drains, including the backside. So 100%.
I'm not really even sure that having rain gardens on the backside of these properties where all you're catching is what's gonna be future lawn areas is worth the money. Or the effort, especially where they're just shown. There's a rain garden here shown that's taking up the like 7 contours at a slope. That's not how they work. That doesn't do anything. That's lot number 1. There's 2 of them on that lot in the back. We've not, now, I understand that in general, what you're doing here could have very little impact to the neighborhood water situation, especially the overland flow routes to the neighborhoods, the homes directly to the east and the west. When you even do a small watershed in a time of concentration, you're not going to change that much with the surface values. I get it. I'm not worried about that. I don't like that a lot of these are just boilerplate things that are just put on here without taking into consideration the specific issues of the site. And the rain gardens is just one example. I know that CAD doesn't lie. I know that the area was taken of that fat dash line and it was 4.5 or so acres according to the numbers in the SWIP. I would like to see the actual calculations included as an appendix. They're not in here. To understand the curve numbers and stuff that are being used for a lot of these things. Now, there's a lot of areas that were not included, it would appear in the capture. There's some areas that are draining to the north on the pavement areas on Holly Drive. I think they have issues, and adding, you know, potentially, I don't know, 1/4 of an acre of imperviousness into there could be a problem. These are the small details that I think the neighbors want to see dealt with, because every little bit adds up. Let's see what they're saying. I don't know that water quality is such an issue right now, and that's what the rain gardens typically, you know, help with. I know that they can capture water and, you know, get the water back into the ground, and that's fine. I didn't see the soils map specifically, but some of these are D soils, so that's not gonna perk all that great. Yes, you're using the calculations. The math has not changed for doing these calculations. The rainfall numbers have. Okay, they've changed. I mean, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but in the past 20 years, what's the 100-year storm now?
For our area, 6.4, I think. It's not quite 7.
And even just like 10 years ago, it was like 5.25. You know, and yes, it's a 100-year storm, but we get 100-year storms far more often than 100 years. And I think, I don't know, I'm not up on it, but I think there was even talk of changing this stuff again. And I don't know if it's been changed or not yet, but the modeling is not exactly accurate. And I've seen a lot of towns require the use of the other kinds of modeling, not just the straight up storm numbers. When you're in issues like this, I wouldn't think that this stuff is necessary in a lot of cases. But considering the problems that are documented in the existing neighborhood that were part of the original design, we have better ways of doing this now. The way that it was done 22 years ago was the best that could be done then. And while the math hasn't changed, the numbers have changed. And the computing power of the software has changed. I don't believe that it is the applicant's responsibility to fix drainage problems in a neighborhood. Okay, I do not think that that's your problem to solve. However, I don't know. I haven't seen the original drawings for the subdivisions, and I haven't seen the original drawings for the catch bait or the basin or anything. That said, when you come in and are going to put water into a conveyance system that is clearly not functioning as it should be, then you take on some of the responsibility of not adding to that burden. And that's just the cost of doing business, as I'm sure you've been in, you know, you've run into these things before. So I think that it's a very reasonable request to ask for a drainage report. To start with the endpoint of the different watersheds. We've got at least 3 major watersheds here. It goes to the north and the east and the west. I haven't looked at the greater areas. But a whole SWIP is not obviously necessary given all the other things that are in there that relate to construction and handling, you know, toxic waste and whatnot. But having that in there, I think, and I'd like to see it with catch basin model as individual catchment areas and how they all tie together. And it's gonna be a little bit of work, I know, but I mean, there's a lot of software, LiDAR and those kinds of things can help with a lot of that. So it's not an undue, unresponsible request.
I really appreciate your knowledge and your opinion of what's going on. Me as a developer and Bob Forrest as partners in this project. And we both own this for a long time. We really, I don't want to come here and fight.
No.
Okay? And I have no interest of fighting. I don't care if I build a house up there. I live right below there. And we are here to make this good. And if the neighbors wanna hire a lawyer because the guy lives there and not in my backyard, and the neighbors don't wanna criticize all the engineering because that's what the guy's paid to do,
That's
I
not
don't
my
wanna go
concern.
there.
That's not my concern.
I know that's
I'm not
not yours.
interested in that.
That's-
I'm looking at what's in front of me
I know.
and the things that I've seen. So I would like to see that. And as far as the, pre and the post, because I don't think that the pre or the existing should be what was the pre and existing before any of this was built. I think the pre/existing number should be what's here now. All right? And the post should be what you're proposing to do. Do you have anything to say about that? I do think that the segmentation and the impact on offsite areas as far as DEC regs go backs up this request pretty well. I think that's probably about it. I think the slopes need to be checked with we have a regulation, it's 25 feet within 25%. There's some of that, I think that needs to be, and I didn't have a chance to look at that. And then there was something we were talking about with building envelope stuff.
Yeah, I think that goes back to, right, what do we think the area is, right,
Yeah.
segmentation, right? I mean, our opinion is that we should be looking at the project as a whole. But when we put on the drawings, building envelopes, well, that's erroneous to what we're being shown with the dotted line and around that. So there are two things on here, and then the other thing.
This is what we got.
The building envelopes, what they're saying is they're coming up with smaller building envelopes with a dotted line. Instead of the traditional building envelopes.
And that's different from what was on the prelim plan 20 years ago.
So you're saying do box is not.
Keep it under the 5 acres.
They're showing building envelopes that can go 5-acre disturbance, right? The disturbance in the buildable areas is probably closer to 10 acres. Right, with the lots that you have. And then to Aaron's point, our design standards for setbacks from, we've talked to the applicant about this before. The setback from all the easements, buffers, right? I mean, those weren't taken into account in what we see in there, it's steep slopes, there's, you know, the water lines and the sewer lines.
So what you're saying is, take a lot. And you're saying, this is my building envelope because that meets setbacks and
I think
consider that entirely.
That's what you said, right? On your drawing, it shows building envelope size of your building, right?
That is the town allowed setbacks. What we're saying here is we have specific footprints. So just like if I came in with a drive-through pharmacy and I know that building now. And now I know these house footprints, so that's what we're proposing. We're just showing on our subdivision plan, like we would on any subdivision plan. That the town has a certain rear yard, a certain front yard, a certain side yard. In no case in a residential development, do you build every square inch of a setback line. When we say build an envelope. I mean,
So I think.
You might
so,
limit the
we can be
disturbance.
reasonable, but I don't, so I disagree with 10 acres, what I'm saying.
So I think that the question for the board is, right, that, the current regulations indicate that. And you have the jurisdiction to, regulate any way you really want. But the current regulations indicate that they do not allow for segmentation. And if you believe that there's going to be more than 5 acres of disturbance, then there should be a complete analysis of the site. And the complete
Is that the
analysis,
same thing that Aaron just said?
yes, and the complete analysis would include many of the things that Aaron spoke of,
I can give Lisa a list.
including others.
So he's saying the same thing you said, just in a different and more detailed way.
I'm not an engineer.
And I think I've agreed that that's our tack that we would take, the difference being that I offer pre-existing, existing, and developed
Oh, you
condition.
can do three if you want to do all three,
It's once-
absolutely.
once
I
we
didn't know
have
that's what you meant.
Once we have the hydraulic data, it's, and it's
If
okay.
you're just taking what he had from before, or looking at historic photos and
We
stuff,
can, we can
that's
still
fine.
use his, the flow is a cue, so we.
But
can
I'm
take
less
his-
concerned about why it was sized the way it was sized.
I follow. You want to see, the existing should show. It's still theoretical, but it's gonna show the theoretical performance today before any development.
Yeah, I'm less concerned about the basin size. And more concerned about the, as-built conditions of the conveyance system and the grading. And I think that it would be irresponsible for me to go forward with, something that introduces additional, runoff into a system that is not functioning.
Fair enough.
And that's really the basis of what I'm getting at. And then there's the little things, about how the roof water, one of the main arguments you're making about this whole thing is not necessarily shown here with the way that the roof water would be discharged and everything that I said before. I won't repeat myself, but, I think that the main concept of how it's happening is completely accurate. And that originally this thing would have been sized to take the water. But since it was built and now, there's been problems. And it behooves coming back and visiting it. And that's all.
And it seems like most of the problems are on the low side of the development, that you can't get that water from there to where the pond is.
And that might turn out to be the case, and the drainage report would bring that to light. And, I think that there could be any number of reasons why residents are having problems with their drainage. I'm sure most of us at some point in our own homes have experienced these kinds of things. It's part of life.
For everybody.
But I don't think that under the circumstances, with all the little things that aren't quite right, that it makes a lot of sense to go forward with it without this information.
And like I said, if the neighbors want to hire an engineer, and if they want to hire a lawyer, and they want to fight us, and everybody's gonna get scared and not want this, we're fine by.
I'm not-
doing that.
That does not
No,
take down any
it-
bearing to what I'm saying.
I know that, but that's my feeling, and that's why when they say that it's not 4.9 acres, I don't believe it, and that's how I see that kind of. That's
I
all,
think
that's
that
all.
the grading can be tightened up and done as, you can do anything you need to do to get it under 5. I've done it. Like, I get it.
That's what we're trying to do.
I get it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's realistic as far as the long term of what's gonna happen. I mean, you can go out there with a surveyor and stake that snow fence out and tell a contractor, you may not cross that line. And they won't. They'll pile dirt. It won't, I mean, we also wanna see something that in the end looks good. And it's not just like, how quickly can we terminate this slope to stay within the 5 acres? Because that's not, I know that the homes are beautiful. I think that everything is beautifully done. I'm thrilled that you want to do this. I just want to make sure that, we have some of these really, really steep slopes that are, my scale's not big enough, but they look like 3 or 4 to 1. And they're just being shown to have a fabric reinforcing mat on it that'll degrade. And I don't know that that's really ideal.
Right, well, that gets back to the 5 acre problem. Is that they probably have to do more than that to make that stable.
Oh, no, they can do it, but in the long run, is it gonna stay? I mean, that grade that's all fill.
That's my point. Is it stable?
I mean, not under the building, but
I'm just gonna make one more comment and then
I'm done. Thank
I'll
you
leave it alone.
for listening.
There was a comment earlier about how we need housing. We need to move forward with these projects. In my opinion, this board can't look at what's happening in the market. We have regulations, we have the code. That's what we look at when we make decisions, not if we need housing or don't need housing. So I just want to put that out there.
But we're not coming in here with a project that doesn't make sense.
No, I'm not saying, I'm just
That's why
saying
we're pointing
that
that out.
if we look at a subdivision or anything else, we have to look at it, does it meet code?
So the bottom line is, Mr. Karen and Matt, what do you want us to do? What do you want to do?
I don't know, I'm not sure. Sure.
Well, we can continue this. Let us, as a development team, I need to tell Mr. Karen, Mr. DeForest, to perform what we talked about. What that cost impact is on an engineering cost. So he needs to have that understanding to say, Matt, go ahead and do that and come back. If, per se, there's two ways of looking at this. Matt, go ahead, or Matt, you're done. I'll let Lisa know that we're done. But if we can continue the hearing at this point in time, let us go back, have a conversation independently so we can strategize our next move.
We can certainly do that. How far away?
You know, and it's so complicated. I'm a builder developer all my life, and all the things that were said today, I'm kind of lost. So I can't imagine some of the people on this board sitting here understanding exactly what it is we're gonna do it, and everybody be happy.
So what he's saying is if we do all this, that.
No, I'm just saying.
Basically, the engineer, our
it will
engineer
Answer
will
all your
review it.
questions.
and advise the board, as is always the case.
Okay.
Just, you know, whatever, you know, like I said, it always seems like things get a lot more complicated than they have to. And if people want to make it not work, then it's not gonna work, that's all. And this is the piece of property that's set up. And it has, you know, it has the facilities there to make it work. And, I guess, you know, I'm not even sure what the cost is gonna be, not that it matters. That the cost is gonna be to try to come up with what it is you're asking and have it be happy, but the problem is, you know, the town doesn't want the basins, they want us to create all these things that make it so difficult. It's, you know, it's a really nice piece of property sitting there just like it is today. It's been the last 20 years, you know.
Arnie,
If we say, you gotta give me 3 weeks to get it to Doug, Doug's gonna need at least a week to look at it, right? So that's 4 weeks out would be optimistic, but let's start there.
April 24th?
Sounds like a plan.
Arnie, did you
I'd
like?
like to ask the question, forget the engineering for a moment, and Matt actually did follow everything he said, it made perfect sense, thank you. I'm not an engineer. I want to put on my home buyer hat. And I look at this lot, and I say to myself, why is the house so close to the road? Why are the houses so close to each other? If I'm not mistaken, you build a very good house. Very good house today is $200 to $250 a square foot. That's $550,000 to $800,000. I'm gonna build an $800,000 house. I sure as hell don't want to be that close to the road. Is there enough room, given it close, because I've walked this area, to move the houses back? Could they be staggered a bit?
That makes it more complicated.
I understand that, but you know, you're through. When I move in, I'm gonna live there for another 50 years. I'm in it for the long haul. And I wanna know that I've got the setbacks, not just what the town requires for minimum. But what I'd like is a buyer.
Well, in a perfect world, I guess we should build a $900,000, you know, to answer that question, we want to keep the things close to the road so we can manage things, you know, that's all.
What do you
So,
mean?
yeah, you know, your preference is not to live like that, but there's a zillion people that this is more space and set back further than where they're from, right? I mean,
It depends on the person. Some people don't like really long drive spaces.
But if you're asking if we're gonna have any trouble selling all these houses,
That'll be.
Maybe not. Yeah, the whole rest of the tract is all set up with these setbacks. We're not moving the houses closer in this section than, these are town setbacks that the whole neighborhood is set up as Bob's.
That's a good answer, thank you.
Okay, April 24th. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Just put in front of it, I don't have that. Lisa find it on the other.
No, you know, there's something wrong with these property taxes.
I love you, Ann.
There are, you know, I saw them, like, right? Yeah, it's a lot.
There's something wrong with that.
I know.
Yeah.
That's all that I was. No, you did. Thank you.
I know.
No, it's okay.
So there is this.
Yes.
For us, it has to go to the zoning board because the project.
The building I have, yeah. I guess. Then like that 15 granite gravel.
It is. That road is steep up there.
It was on the, right here. Yeah, no.
Okay, folks. Just so you know, we had originally had on the calendar today, the application for Ewart. It was a 2-lot subdivision with site plans and special use permits. And we have referred that matter to the zoning board of appeals because they require a variance on the new lot number 2. And Mr. Mastriani, their engineer, was of the opinion that it didn't make any sense to come in and see us today until that variance was obtained. And then, so we've done that. We've made a referral to the zoning board of appeals. So that explains why that.
Make a motion to refer it.
So it has not been referred yet, and I think we need to.
I would entertain a motion.
So we need to refer it. Oh, no, I can't.
Oh,
I'll make a motion to refer it.
Judy, Judy made a motion. Aaron, second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
What are we voting on?
This is for referral to the zoning board of appeals on the front yard setback from 200 down to 186.
I did not vote, Lisa.
Is it the setback or the front?
It's the road frontage.
It's road frontage. Yep, I'm not too on it. All right, so folks, the last thing on our agenda today is to have an open discussion regarding the comprehensive plan that we have all been provided with,
You know what I.
our thoughts.
Thanks.
Is this something we're referring back to the town board? Or what is the purpose?
This is for comments. This
So
is,
there's a public hearing tomorrow night, correct? Right. The public hearing, open house or
Tomorrow.
tomorrow night?
is it tomorrow?
Yeah.
They have another one down the road.
So
Yeah.
there can be an official letter, some comments that we put together. This is our first discussion about it, but it's not gonna be the last. Not necessarily.
I've read through it a couple times and I think that since I'm an old man and there's younger people on the town board, younger people on our board that look at life differently, that it's hard to come up with I think it's gonna be hard for our board to come up with a consensus of any kind. Other than just. This person thinks this, that person thinks that, the other person thinks that.
Actually, I think that's better, Rich, because the last thing I want to hear is a consensus of anybody. That's what drives me nuts with the town board. Everything on the town board is unanimous. This board is not unanimous. We have all kinds of different ways of looking at things. And I would strongly support each individual having his own list of comments. Lisa, you're gonna hate me. But you could probably put all these together in some coherent form. I think they would be better off if I've got 10 comments. They're the kinds of things I look at. They're the kinds of things that I need to understand something. You put something in your comprehensive plan, it makes no sense to me, explain it.
Well, I agree. I mean, this is highly focused on. A climate agenda. And I mean, I don't know what other people think about climate change and global warming and the rest of that stuff, but there's a lot of things in here that push us in a direction to correct, if I can put it this way, correct climate change. But there's no data in there about cost and benefit. So you want us to do A, but you're not telling me what the benefit of doing that is in the long run. And I don't know, I just personally have a lot of problems with what's in there. And I don't know really how to address or say it.
And you look like you want to talk.
Well, I've been through it a couple of times too, and I don't believe in a lot of this stuff.
That's because we're old.
Maybe, I'm right there with you. It's like, are you kidding? Okay, I have the rest of this form. It goes like this. Did you print it all
No, I didn't, because I don't want to spend the money on the ink and the paper to do it, so I didn't do it.
And affecting the climate.
out? Yeah.
And climate, that's right.
And you
But
can
there's just, I mean,
download it though.
it talks about sidewalks, I drove by the high school this morning. At 7:45, because I had a dentist appointment, I had to get by the high school. And we're talking about electric buses and electric cars, and I had to sit with 250 cars dropping off their kids at the high school as the buses drive around
Yeah.
with nobody on it. And it's like, what do we do? Are we crazy?
I agree with that. I walk the dog every morning. I see the bus go by and there may be one kid on the bus. And the same thing, there was
Beginning
something.
or the end of the
This is-
pickup?
I'm
I was
not,
at the
I'm
high
not picking up.
school.
I'm just saying that it's probably,
I
I would
would
say
say
it's
line is to some reason why that happens, if like
Yeah.
you're a parent of a high schooler.
Yeah.
But
like, and then the central bus thing,
But
making more
the-
transportation.
it has
Enders-
nothing to do with the. planning
Enders
board or
Road
the
Middle
comprehensive
School is the same thing. They have a police officer out there directing traffic as the cars come
And
out
there's nobody
onto
else.
Enders Road. I mean, it's not just the high school, it's both high schools. It's the middle schools, and it's probably even the elementary
Yes,
schools.
Yes,
I won't,
Oh, wow.
yeah, ESM too. I won't mention the individual's name. He's a friend of mine. He's a crossing guard. He said, I only have 5 people. Because everybody else isn't, their parents are taking them, they're going. So, I mean, nothing is in there about that. And personally, I think as we talk about saving energy and cutting carbon emissions and so on and so forth, there's a lot more that could be done if that's what they really want to do.
They're debating whether or not to have a quarry. It's like, they're gonna build these houses. What are they gonna do for stone and sand? I mean, the whole thing is kind of crazy.
Well, that stuff comes from a lot of other places.
Yeah, but it's,
But trucking is the cost of bringing, they're not gonna truck it from 40 miles away.
They absolutely are.
There
And
is-
they do.
There is no way.
They do. I've been in the business. They do.
I think from a planning board perspective, for the comprehensive plan. And I sent a bunch of my own comments a while
Speak
back.
up a little bit, because you got a fan going over here.
I sent my own comments a while back when they had requested that. But I think from a planning board perspective, my one question, and maybe you guys understand it better than I do, and for some reason I can't get it to load, so I can't speak specifically to it right now, but because it was there was like some talk of zoning and then some talk of, and I looked at it a while ago, so the planning for future space from a planning board, because we always kind of say, if we had a comprehensive plan, we would know we could put X here and Y here. I feel like I would like to maybe give a little bit more clarity as to what we should look to within the comprehensive plan, when we get a zone change request, or we get a proposal. But maybe you guys all understand it.
No, that's it.
Because there was like, it seems like there's two different things.
That is an excellent point, because we're dealing with solar projects. And in the comprehensive plan, it talks about an overlay district to say where these projects should go. It talks about marijuana dispensaries and so on. I mean, we don't know what,
Yeah, and it sounds like they're gonna do some more study as part of the comprehensive plan. As far as like prime farmland
yes,
study and stuff, but that might help us direct it more, but yeah,
It's crazy.
there's nothing. I feel like we'll definitely still have to investigate more, but. Again, for a zone change request. Or what we're.
and they're gonna
looking at a
change,
proposal for.
they're gonna change the zoning law. I mean, all the laws are gonna be different based on what I read in that. What they'll be, I don't know. Where they want solar projects, I don't know. And we have applications that come in. What do we do until that's finalized?
Well, it doesn't, the zone stuff isn't just changed by default of the fact that there's a comprehensive plan. It would all still have to go through the process. And I didn't go through, I read it several times too. I didn't make really specific comments, well, other than the fact that on page 14, they said that the town was settled circa 1970, and I know that that's a typo, but that was just like. ooh.
1970?
Yeah, like those little things will get caught before it's done, but when you look at some of the mapping, for instance, on page 24, the existing land use, right? And it has to do with some of the labels that they use. And so I look around, it's easy for me to focus in on where I live because I can picture the areas and all that kind of stuff. And like they've got public service next to me, which is clear path, right? And then residential, and then they've got vacant. Well, what does vacant mean? Vacant can mean anything. They've got vacant as a forest. They've got vacant as part forest, part farmland, and then they've got agricultural. So what ultimately happens with these things is all these different mappings get overlaid together, which then get used to inform how we want to see development. But if you don't have if you have vacant and people think, oh, vacant, that's perfect for development. Well, vacant can be a forest that people might otherwise want to keep that's not classified under the category of parks and open space because it's not a park, right? But it looks like it's vacant on here and it's right next to farmland. And so when people read these words, they get pictures in their head of what they think that means. And then you go down to the next one, zoning, page 28, restricted, all of these parcels that I'm looking at where I just said, the clear path public service, the forest and the farmland is all zoned RA. So on the zoning map, it's all one color. When it's very, very different. And so then as you keep layering these things on, where then they make recommendations or your recommendations are based on the layering of these items, it becomes completely wrong compared with what's really there. Am I making any sense?
No, that makes perfect
So
sense.
I'm not gonna get into like this property and this property and this property, and who thinks what should be done where.
What it's talking about, so thank you for the.
Yeah, I think
No,
that's,
honestly.
and I can't even get into the solar, yeah, we need to have an idea of where we wanna see that go. And then I think then a lot of this stuff comes into the design guidelines and, you know, being really new. I don't wanna jump ahead or repeat something that's already been done, but I would really like to be part of something where we can define some more specific design guidelines for the town.
There was something in there that I was really surprised about. It said that there's certain parts of the town that does not have zoning. And I saw that, I'm like,
Yeah.
really?
No,
It's strange.
I think every square inch has zoning.
it does.
In there, it says it doesn't.
Yeah, I remember.
I can't tell you where it was. I'd have to go back and look at it. But when I read that, I was like,
Something.
really? There's parts of the town that doesn't have zoning.
And I feel like the future land use map on page 50 is showing Clear Path is low density residential. Well, that's never gonna happen.
Why is Clear Path
Yeah,
on
there's
ours?
other and
Why is it,
like.
why is Clear Path on
Clear
ours?
Path is in the town of Manlius. It's both.
Oh, there's just one house that's in,
Right, and that's what I'm saying, is the
Oh,
future
the-
land
the-
use map is showing.
okay.
It's so,
Yeah, because of the, what's it called?
it's,
The
I
community
don't
center. and
know,
whatever.
I mean, if this is just me knowing immediately what's around my house. Who's, I mean, how do you even begin to
Everyone.
look at all of it and say, is that actually representative of what's going on? Because I don't have any confidence in, and I was involved in some of it. Not this part. I'm done. That was all I had to
There's
say about it.
There's a portion in the beginning of this that talked about the history of the town. And I can't remember the exact words. You remember, Judy, what I
Yes,
said to you? It just, I mean, I guess it's a perspective. This is a minor thing. The town of Manlius is located on the homelands of the, I can't even pronounce it, people.
Onondaga.
Haudenosaunee.
It's the Onondaga Nation.
Yes. This land was taken through a history of unjust treatment and land acquisition during, and I read that, I'm like. Yeah. I don't know, it's,
So the question is, putting that into the plan. Where does that lead to?
I don't know, I know one thing for sure, when I bought my house, I paid money for it. So I didn't take that from anybody,
So you're taking offense to the language.
yes,
Yes.
that it was unjustly taken. This is,
I think it was the history.
that's part of the history. But
Worded.
you can look at a lot of countries throughout the world that, and the British perhaps the worst of it, that they just went, and they took the properties and that's just how it was done.
It is,
And
it is what was done. It is a fact, but, and I think that, I mean, I know what you're saying.
I take offense to the word unjust unjust treaties.
And I think that becomes like a semantics, like,
And maybe it is, maybe it's nothing, but when I read it, it caught me.
so does that discredit a lot of the other parts of it to you because it was too woke for you?
That's the
There's a
word.
lot of woke in there that bothered me,
I
but
just have to say it.
but-
I mean, I know that's what you're getting at.
yeah, you know,
Does that make you not, does that make you take other parts of it less seriously because personally? Because if you're if you, not that this is about that, but if people are reading this and they're coming from all different perspectives, I wonder.
well, that's one of the things that bothered me about that, just reading that. But also the, what they call DEI. Having a community that's more DEI.
Oh, yeah, crazy.
I want somebody to explain that to me. What does that mean?
What does it stand for?
Diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. Explain that to me. What is it that we're not doing now that we need to change to get the, I don't know.
I'm not sure what that has to do with comprehension.
It's in
It's in
there.
It's on page 30.
It's in there.
Well, so that it's because of the community piece.
That's my point though. Aaron, you hit it right on the head. That's my point. What does it have to do with?
Foster a
comprehension?
community that embraces and promotes diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. See, it turns
Okay.
me right off. I'm not interested at all.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I want to know what it means to people.
It's just a sentence.
What does it mean?
They want things to be welcoming for everyone.
Yeah, we're inclusive for everyone.
That's not what it means. In my opinion, that is not what it means.
Equity is the part that gets me.
Equity means everybody gets the same thing at the end of the day. That is not
That's
something
not what
I,
equity means.
pardon?
That's not what equity means.
Tell me what equity means.
Equal means everybody gets the same.
No, equality means everybody starts at the same place. Equity means everybody ends at the same place.
No,
Then it goes
equal-
on with action items. It says hire.
Like-
town
like
social
you could
service
have two
coordinators.
kids. You don't treat them equal, because one needs braces and one doesn't need braces, so you treat them equitably. The one who needs braces gets braces, the one who doesn't get any braces.
I learned early
That's
on,
equity.
I learned early on with my kids, when they said, you love him more than you love me. And I used to argue and say, no, that's not the case. And finally I said, no, yeah, that is the case. I love him more than you. What are you gonna do about it? But my point is equity tells people that the outcomes are similar. Not equality is you start from the same place. Equity is everybody's equal at the end of the day. So if you have a $400,000.
It's actually opposite.
Yeah.
It's actually opposite. I'm looking it up just so we can.
Okay,
Move
no,
on.
that's good. Look it up, look it up.
Equality means providing the same to all.
Okay,
Equity means recognizing that we do not all start from the same place and must acknowledge and make adjustments to imbalances.
Oh, no. then-
see, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
But I'm,
We
you
need to-
need to like
That's-
take
that's-
something that somebody else has more of and give it to somebody else.
Exactly, that's my
I'm
point.
not sure that that's
I don't
something
think-
that we need to be discussing
In a
with
con-
regards
the
to the
plan
comprehensive
figured-
plan. No, I'm saying like, I don't think that's I think that we should move on.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
People are
I feel
gonna have more or less than you have.
I think,
That's
yeah,
life.
like, what are the other, I mean, so language, we can say that the language could be off-putting for some people. Is that a fair
Yes.
statement?
I do not agree with that.
Different people for different reasons. I mean, there might be something in here that you don't like.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not opposed to the,
And I don't think we're writing something from the group. I'm just trying to sort out everybody's feelings.
Probably one of my biggest issues with this is that it's a lot about climate change.
Yeah.
And electric this, electric that, electric, and that doesn't solve the problem. But my vision of future is different than others. I just don't think that is where I'd like our town to be. I have never in my life owned a house that did not have natural gas. I've had natural gas in every house. And where they want to move is to do away with that.
It's happening.
Yeah, I know the
It's
state
real.
wants to do it, the feds want to do it. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. Moving away fossil fuels, that's in there.
way bigger than.
I don't think that's part of what they're
Plan
talking, I
comments.
mean, I think that you're taking a political hidden agenda into this where we don't need to.
Well, then they shouldn't use that language.
I don't disagree.
It's in there.
I don't disagree, but I think that it becomes a triggering thing for people politically,
I think
obviously.
that what Aaron is getting at is,
Yeah.
if this is about the whole town. Constructively speaking, do we say there are people of a certain generation who be off-put by this language? Could it be modified? Something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I'm not being included. That's not inclusive.
I think
I
that,
want to make sure
well, I think that in order for everybody to have their opinion heard and to make sure, to be respectful of, maybe some parts of this were written from a specific perspective. Right?
Probably,
And
probably.
it is offensive to people from a different perspective. And that's a generic statement. And so maybe there's a way to, without bringing it in really hard from one side toward the other side, say, could we maybe find a more neutral way of doing this? Because there are words these days, there are triggering words for people, and it does come down to politics. I mean, honestly.
There's some people who think having a cost benefit analysis is offensive to some people.
And I think that is something that isn't in there, that should be in there.
Right next to the sidewalk.
All those stuff, I mean, sidewalks and parks
Social
and other
workers.
things, yeah, I mean. I just, I guess, Joe, if I have anything to say about this in a general kind of thing, is my vision of where I'd like to see the town 10, 20, 30 years from now, if I'm still alive, is different than the people that are drafting this. Does it make it right or wrong? No, it's just different. It's hard to comment.
We just simply ask them to be neutral on some of the stuff that sounds political. And I think that people who put that stuff in there are very comfortable with it. Without realizing that many people are less comfortable than I am certainly less comfortable. The minute I hear diversity, inclusion, equity, I think to myself,
My hair's on fire.
well, too late for me to get my hair on fire. I
Maybe
think
that's
of my college, where they shout down somebody whose point of view they've decided before the fact is offensive. And they try and get them to stay away. He finally comes and they shout and make noise. It's possible to hear a person speaking. It's been going on all over the country. And it troubles me because I agree with you that we can talk to each other respectfully, and treat each other with respect. We can accept different points of view. That's what we're looking for. That's what they're asking for, and I think we should do it. It doesn't have to be a political pissing contest.
There's enough of that. I think
Yeah.
there's still you know, I would like to see more, brought into some of the bigger items,
Land use.
land use.
Exactly,
The
that's what I
open
thought it
space.
would be, a land use. plan.
And, you know, climate stuff is one thing, but, I'd like to see more looked at with regards to some of the environmental aspects. We have some really interesting, unique landforms, forest content.
And they did address that in there.
They did, but that wasn't carried forward really into looking at how things could be shaped. I mean, let's step back and say, what are the, and this might meet both sides of the aisle. What are the reasons why people want to live here? What are the 3, 5 reasons people want to live in Manlius?
Schools.
The schools,
I like to be here for the taxes.
yeah. I mean, but if we can look at that and say, do we like that? Do we want to improve on that?
Low crime.
Do we want to bring more of the other things up to that aren't the real things? You know, like,
Yeah.
do you want to enhance the reasons why people want to live here, or do you want to help change the reasons why people don't want to live here? Right? Those are one of the two big ways of looking at it. And I just have to say this, I'm really surprised that, the applicant did not bring up conserving open space with his tight stuff. I just kept waiting for it, be like, well, it's plus zoning, conservation of open, and I'm like,
But they won't guarantee that they'll
it
only
was just a comment,
this
like,
much space.
you know, like, we see these things and we may try to include something like that as we go forward. I thought it was funny because I had seen it in the
You know,
company.
I was surprised at the number of people who were involved in this. And they came out with a plan that you could probably buy off of the shelf over in the bookstore. You know, I was really surprised.
A lot of it you can, so a lot of this is boilerplate.
Yeah, from
Yeah.
other,
It
yeah.
really is.
Absolutely, yeah.
It really is. And then they take the data and they plug those numbers in.
You think down in the basement here, they have some little lockers or something, but they've got old books that the original people wrote all these things down,
yeah.
the zoning and all that stuff. And they would keep running down and looking at these books. You know, they're saying, oh, this is the first plan. Well, it really isn't. It's maybe the first thing that says comprehensive plan. But there are books down there that have all this laid out by people who had done them over the years. And they're locked up. That's how important they are. I'm not just I'm not an advocate for this at all.
And I
mean,
wonder if
I
Barb,
wonder how much they paid for
$150,000.
it. That's all.
Yeah, well, that's the plan. Now we gotta implement it.
Yeah, no, and I think it's crazy.
I don't know if Barb Rebecca, had any input into?
Probably
She's
not.
a historian.
I know, did she
Yeah,
have any
I
input?
don't, I didn't see her on this at all.
I didn't see her name anywhere.
I don't know.
I didn't get a
I know
card.
she did, I know she was involved in the beginning when they had information session, and she was one of the,
There was a historic,
yeah, there was a whole historic
like,
section.
subgroup.
But there's very little that's new. You know, I went through it, I couldn't believe it, I said,
We must have skipped over that part because they talked about how it was taken from the Native Americans.
I saw.
It's history. It's one side.
It's
That
for
just-
me, it's,
We all know what took place 250, 300 years.
I agree with you. Was it necessary to say?
Right.
That's
I
not
was
me,
really
right?
not impressed. Anyway,
I look at this as being an overall report of all aspects of town life and town involvement. And only a certain degree of that pertains to us.
Right,
And I had originally thought that they would be articulating specifically where they want what and how they
yeah,
want.
yeah.
yeah,
For example, solar.
Yeah.
And they're telling us here that there's a commercial solar study group that is recommending that the code be amended, limiting the number and the kilowatts and or proximity to these large plants, but they're not giving us the information. But what they are giving us, they're telling us what the town people on the whole are looking for in various aspects of life. And they're really giving the planning board the opportunity to continue doing what we are doing. We're controlling the type of buildings that are going up. We can control the aesthetic values of the buildings, how the buildings are gonna be looking, the landscaping of the buildings, handling the traffic, handling safety, encouraging the housing to come up, but controlling all the aspects. I think they're giving us a free hand to keep doing what we're doing and how we're doing and consider everything, but knowing what our townspeople are looking for, trying to build that into what we're doing.
Well, why do they have to go to this big format to put all that stuff in?
Because everybody else is doing it.
I guess, and I guess the question too, following up, Joe, on what you're saying is then. Would we kind of look at that future land use map, or, you know, I guess my question is it too early for us to refer to that as a
I don't think it's accurate.
reference?
I would agree.
You know, and we're just looking at things, but, and then just one more thing about all this other stuff. I cannot attend the open house and tomorrow, because I have a concert to attend. But with all the comments that are not necessarily planning related, I would suggest going to the public hearing and the open house to voice
They
those
do-
kinds of.
They do
comments.
have another one in May too.
Yeah, I'm just saying for all the,
Yeah.
no, like, all the other things that we were talking about.
Input.
I'm not so sure that I'm gonna be there tomorrow night either, but I think that this isn't gonna be just, you know, nothing's being decided.
No,
And I'd like to read or whatever the feedback after tomorrow's meeting to see. I think that the people who write this stuff know. I'm not talking about which angle they're coming from, but it's a very fine line for them to walk between telling people what to do and not telling them what to do by giving them the information that they need to make the decisions themselves. I think that there's a lot of really valuable stuff in here. What the people like. They showed them the pictures of the
Yeah.
different streetscapes and the resin. Those are things that anybody with, you know, senses can tell you what they like. Whether they can understand language or whether they care about details of things or not, they can say, that feels good when I look at that. I want to live there, or I don't like that. And I think those are some of, I think regardless of what comes out with this, we have to decide when we look at projects, whether we're embodying the things that people want. And to bring that back around, are those the reasons why people want to live here? And do we want more of that, or do we want to bring in other things to bring the other stuff up?
I don't disagree with this, however. If we, and I saw those two, this is what we like, this is what we don't like, you know, type of thing. Do we have somebody that wants to build what we like? And is willing to put money at risk to build what we like? Or do they want to build what we don't like? And then we have to make a decision. This person is in front of us with an application to build something we don't like. Do we say no?
Well, we encourage them to modify their plans.
Some of those modifications are pretty substantial.
They can be, and they can be costly for a developer.
Right.
But we should be building what we want to build.
Yeah.
And not what they necessarily want to build if we think it's unrealistic.
Right.
And it's not what the people want, not what we want.
I think that one thing that might, that this board doesn't exercise is any kind of real architectural design guidelines. And I think that should be in here. If they're saying this is what we like and this is what we don't like, then we can say, and along the Genesee Street corridor, this is the
Yes.
preferred design.
So that's.
Planning
where I'm
board-
going.
And there's nothing that is giving the planning board to say, fix the code or add design guidelines,
Right.
that should to implement those beautiful pictures.
I think that design guidelines are something that we need to have. And I think it's not necessarily, we will or won't approve your project based on this. But this is the kind of stuff that we would like to see. And people can get a feel for that when they're in their infancy of developing things. Owners, contractors, developers, all can look, all their consultants are looking at the code before they even put together a plan. And they can say, well, Manlius wants to see this kind of stuff.
Right.
Can we afford it? Do we want to do it? Is that what we want to put our name on? All this kind of stuff. Because they will do it if they have to, or if they don't, someone else will. If you look at development in other parts of the country, we are well within our rights to establish our town as something of a, I don't know what the right words are.
Higher
but
standard.
Something, yes, I don't want to be, but I think that we absolutely have the right to do that. And by letting them know ahead of time, before they spend a bunch of time and money, putting something together that we know in our hearts that, or whatever, that we don't want for our vision, we can eliminate a lot of trouble and time and anxiety and stress and frustration. And it doesn't have to be very specific. It can be, we want to see stuff like this or not like this, like that, that's a thing down the road. when we talk about
Materials,
it.
materials.
I
Preference.
think the other thing in here, it's inherent just to be, that's, over the last 20, 30 years, when you talk to people who have the long-term history, like Dan just talked about, if you look at the town of Manlius code, I've been told this by people who have relatives here that helped establish the original zoning code. The original zoning code, we need to probably affect this. The original zoning code of the town of Manlius was put together as a veteran. So when you go in and you read everything in the town of Manlius code, and you look at other codes, it is geared towards residential. And over the last 70 years, that's what has been established here. It's basically residential. So
We were farms. It was all farms.
Just to try to modify that, I think design guidelines help in doing that. And there's other little idiosyncrasies that speak that, but if you look around, the villages and the town as a whole, it's predominantly residential.
Right.
We don't have a whole really maybe shop areas.
When we have the ability to keep that with the design guidelines, we have the ability to keep the character the way that it might have been, or that it's being lost by becoming too glazed over cookie cutter, Long Island gas station looking stuff, right? That said, like we have, like the stone walls around, the types of vegetation, these kinds of things, the quality materials, there's absolutely no reason why we can't ask for granite curbing. It is far superior than concrete slip form curbing, and they gave it to us on that one job that I asked for. Like, there's no reason, right, that we can't ask for granite curbing.
There you go.
I've been on the other side of The other side of the table, when I hear granite curbing, it's like.
Yeah, but
You see
the stuff is gone in a year, 2 years.
Pardon?
It crumbles immediately.
Concrete.
But you know,
I think the other thing is, right, from a geographic standpoint, you know, when I look at this, some of the futuristic things that are on some of those maps, I think it's in by our natural geography.
yeah,
So, right, you have an escarpment or a beautiful view shed over near you. You have the streams, right, the upper reaches of the streams have more oxygen in them as they come down. So the oxygenated streams tend to have, more of the trout fishing capabilities. When we get into the lower levels, like into Lake Creek and whatnot, you know, those are more pan fish and whatnot. You know, on the north end of town, there's an awful lot of wetland.
Yeah.
There's also not a lot of infrastructure on the north end of town. So I think, you know, when we look at the maps of what we're planning to do, and a comp plan should be, you know, somewhere in the range of 5 to 10 years of what you're looking at, in my opinion. But those are the type of things that should be helping us structure where we see the vision of.
So I think listening, I think there are things this board can improve. And I think that kind of input is critical.
I think so.
And I'd like to certainly see that from this board, because, and it doesn't have to be a lot of words, because if it's less words and a few points, that this is something all the board agrees upon, it carries weight, I think.
So are you suggesting that as a board, we come together with some bullet items, and then if we each have comments specifically on other things, we make those individually?
Well, some of the things that I heard was talking about design guidelines, talking about preserving the character of the community and made,
natural.
you know, the natural resources, the,
Unique.
you know, the unique characteristics. And those like 3, 4, 5 things, if they get, you know, kind of distilled, maybe with a couple bullets under it and say, hey, this is what was important to the planning board. And then your various other things you could bring up, you know, but.
Why she look at me?
One thing that we should, years ago, was when we put the critical and do, we'll probably only, we'll probably involve a Joe, but when we put the critical environmental area in play, you know, we kind of struggled as to what that would do. But we involved woods area.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, you know, during the pandemic, that was an area that was tremendously used and brought a lot of value. And there may be other areas like, you know, the escarpment areas or, you know, wetlands or, you know, other things like that, that we might also be critical environmental areas.
We did that thing on Quarry Road.
Yeah,
Remember where, you know,
I mean, they may not necessarily be parks, but, you know.
And you
they're-
just, Lisa,
we left it open
this
space.
these last few things, I think.
they're coming.
Yeah. Their list.
And that's why I
You
think
were here for that one.
that the mapping that they've done doesn't work for what we're trying to get from it. You know, that they've got things labeled as vacant and they're not, or what does vacant mean? That's a really poor word, I
Maybe
think.
we could ask a starting point, we could ask where the maps are from and who and how
Well,
they were generated.
It's, yeah, so some of it is straight, like the one was zoning, and that's
Yeah, we
fine,
don't- yeah.
but that doesn't really reflect what it is now. Like the whole area around me is RA.
Yeah.
And there's woods, there's farmland, there's clear path, there's horse farms, there's resident, like it's all like, it doesn't really mean a whole lot.
So here's the thing, you know, when you're on a committee, right, everyone's going along, and pretty soon, everyone's like, this is the best thing ever, and you're like, really proud of yourself, and then out it goes, and people are like,
Yeah.
what? You know, and I think that it's incumbent, I think, upon this board, for those things that are relevant to this board, to make this committee aware of, you know, the few critical issues, half a dozen maybe.
This to me looks like it wasn't done by people. It was just done by machine. there's nothing personable about this thing at all.
What you just said is important to me because I have personal thoughts and then planning board thoughts. And what we should be giving back to them are planning board thoughts.
Yes. I
What we
think that
think
there's gonna
would
be
help us
different-
as a planning board, even though I may not like it personally.
Right,
but
different things,
this is-
right.
Yeah, so that's a good point.
Very well said, Rick.
Yeah. 'Cause I think
But
we
you're
all,
only one vote.
we all feel that.
I'm only one vote.
I think it would say a lot about this body that works very hard. To come up with an appropriate document. Not just go throw it in, because I see the dedication of the people.
So how do we leave this?
I think Aaron should write it.
Anyone who wants to,
And
express their own
I
opinions.
know. my virtual-
Lisa was making some notes of this last, maybe the last 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And the bullet points, and then maybe.
We need to start there.
Yeah.
Oh.
Just draft it.
Circulate, at
Yeah.
least circulate the bullet points,
Yeah.
so we can all, can we comment
Can we
that
do
though on an email? Isn't that not
Yeah, or
allowed?
just share a Google Doc. Do you have a Google Doc?
So,
Let me do that.
respond back to,
Lisa.
all. Me,
Yeah,
Okay.
attorney-client privilege.
right.
Okay.
As a reply all, but wait,
Not
Just to
reply
you.
all.
Reply to
Yes,
her, copy
and then-
everybody else.
And
oh,
then we can compile it.
did you say that that is right? Reply to you and CC everybody else?
Don't CC anybody.
Okay,
Nobody on the board?
Right, it'll come to me, I'll compile them and send them out as
Oh,
attorney-client
okay,
privilege documents.
Never
Okay,
heard that
so-
before.
Lisa will come
Now
up
you
with
know.
what she thinks she's hearing,
For the draft.
send it out to everybody. And then we'll all reply back just to you with our feedback, and then you'll edit it and send it back out again.
I don't know if I'll edit it, but maybe Jill. will.
And as long as we don't put anything about any applications that are in front of this
Yeah.
board, then it's not foilable.
Right.
Well, is anything that is kept attorney-client privileged, right? So let us do that.
Okay.
And we'll figure out how to get it.
I was just curious.
Okay,
I'm
is
sure
it
we'll
time for
wanna
me to
make
make
sure
a
that-
motion?
Richard, I've been waiting for you to make a motion.
I'll make a motion with adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Bye.
Aye. Thank you all.
Aaron.
It's been a good evening with a lot of discussions.